They said no one walked away from the Alpha King, not from his court, not from his claim, not from the invisible gravity that bent an entire kingdom around his will. But on the coldest morning of winter, while frost still silvered the palace gates and the guards stamped their boots against the dark, one woman did exactly that. She left with no carriage, no escort, no jewels, no family crest. Nothing but the name she had almost forgotten belonged to her. Mira. By noon, the palace knew she was gone. By sunset, the kingdom would learn what grief looked like when it wore a crown. But 3 months earlier, none of them had noticed her at all. She moved through the royal halls like smoke. Useful, silent, unseen. The servants called her lucky because she worked in the upper palace where the fires burned hotter and the leftovers were richer. The nobles never called her anything. Most had never once looked directly at her face. That was how she survived. Head lowered, steps quiet, eyes open. She polished silver in rooms where war was discussed. She changed linens in chambers where alliances were broken in whispers. She carried trays into the library where ministers lied with smiles sharp enough to draw blood. And every night, when the bells marked midnight, she counted the coins hidden beneath a loose stone in the servant quarters. 37 copper pieces. The price of a life if one knew how to disappear. She had almost enough. The only danger in being invisible was forgetting others could still see you when they chose. The first time King Raylan noticed her, she was bleeding. A crystal goblet had slipped from a noblewoman's hand during a feast and shattered across the black marble floor. Mira knelt to gather the shards before anyone stepped on them. One piece sliced clean through her palm. Blood welled bright and immediate. She hissed under her breath and closed her fist. Then the hall went silent. 500 wolves had been laughing one breath earlier. The next, not one voice remained. Mira looked up slowly. At the far end of the ballroom, seated on the moonstone throne beneath chandeliers blazing like captured stars, the Alpha King was already standing. He descended the dais with the measured certainty of a predator who had never once doubted the world would part for him. It did. Rows of nobles stepped back so quickly their chairs scraped stone. He wore black formal leathers instead of ceremonial silver. Dark hair brushed his brow. His jaw was cut from shadow. His eyes gold, not warm gold, the pale, dangerous gold of winter sunlight over ice. He stopped in front of her. Mira became aware of everything at once, the sting in her palm, the blood on the marble, the scent of cedar and smoke rolling from him, the heat of his body even through the cold vastness of the hall. He said only one word, hand. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Her body moved before pride could object. She placed her injured hand in his. The instant skin met skin, the world changed. Fire raced up her arm. Her breath caught so sharply it hurt. His pupils swallowed the gold until only thin, burning rings remained. A growl vibrated low in his chest. Not anger, recognition. The room gasped as one living thing. Mira tried to pull back. His grip tightened for half a heartbeat, then loosened immediately. Choice. He was giving her choice. She snatched her hand away as if burned. "What did you do?" she whispered. His gaze never left her face. "What did you hide?" The question struck harder than any shout. Because buried beneath years of obedience and hunger and silence, Mira carried one truth no one in this palace could know. She was not born a servant. She had been made one. Before she could answer, a voice sliced through the hall. "She is nothing." Lady Varel descended the side stairs in a river of silver silk and diamonds. Her smile was elegant. Her eyes were poison. To the court, she was a respected widow who had taken in a distant orphaned relation out of generosity. To Mira, she was the woman who had stolen 15 years. "Forgive the disturbance, Your Majesty," Varel said smoothly. "The girl is clumsy and overdramatic. I will remove her." Raylan did not look at her. No. The single syllable hit the room like thunder. Varel's smile thinned. "She belongs to my household." Raylan's voice dropped colder still. "She belongs to herself." Every noble in the chamber froze. Mira stared at him. No one had ever said those words about her. Not once. Varel recovered first. Surely the king does not intend to elevate a servant over noble order because of a cut hand. At last, Raylan turned his head. The force of his attention made even seasoned councilmen flinch. "You mistake restraint for uncertainty." The chandeliers trembled. Several wolves lowered their eyes instinctively. Then he faced Mira again. "If you wish to leave this hall, you may." Her heart pounded. "If you wish to return to her, I will not stop you." Varel's nails dug into her own palms. "If you wish safety, stand behind me." The choice hung in the glittering air. Real, impossible, terrifying. Mira should have gone to Varel. She knew that cage, knew the cost of disobedience there. The king was another kind of danger entirely. Power this absolute always demanded payment. Yet when she looked at Lady Varel, she saw years of cold rooms, withheld meals, bruises hidden beneath sleeves, and every door locked from the outside. When she looked at the king, she saw a future she could not read, and that was enough to frighten her more than pain ever had. So she did the only thing no one expected. She turned away from both of them. Then she walked straight out of the ballroom. The court erupted behind her. She did not run until the servant corridor swallowed the sound. By midnight, guards searched every wing. By dawn, Raylan had overturned half the palace, looking for a woman who had refused a king in front of 500 witnesses. And in the darkness beneath the kitchens, kneeling beside the loose stone where her coins were hidden, Mira finally understood something far more dangerous than royal anger had awakened in that ballroom. She could still feel him, a thread, hot and alive. Somewhere above her in the palace, the Alpha King was furious, and somehow, so was she. Mira did not sleep that night. She lay on the narrow servant cot fully clothed, boots still on, every muscle rigid beneath the thin blanket, while the palace breathed around her in pipes, footsteps, and distant doors. But louder than all of it was him. Not his voice, not his tread. Something stranger. A pulse inside her chest that did not belong to her own body. Heat flared low beneath her ribs, then sharpened into a restless pressure that made stillness impossible. When she closed her eyes, she could almost sense where he was in the vast stone palace. Moving, stopping, turning, pacing like a caged beast in rooms built for kings. The thread tightened whenever he came nearer, loosened when he went away. By dawn, she hated it. By sunrise, she feared she would miss it if it vanished. She sat upright with a curse and pressed the heels of her hands to her eyes. This is madness. The woman in the cot opposite hers rolled over. Then keep muttering quieter. Pella pushed tangled curls from her face and squinted through the dimness. Round-cheeked, blunt, and impossible to offend, she had become the closest thing Mira possessed to a friend. "You look terrible," Pella added. "You always say that, because it keeps being true." Mira almost smiled. Almost. Then footsteps thundered in the corridor outside. Every servant in the room stiffened. The door opened so hard it struck the wall. Royal guards filled the frame in black armor chased with silver. Behind them stood a broad-shouldered man with weathered features, silver threaded through dark hair, and eyes too sharp to miss anything. The King's first beta, Commander Torin. His gaze swept the room once and landed on Mira immediately. Of course it did. You? His voice carried command without cruelty. With me? Pella caught Mira's wrist under the blanket. If they're executing you, I'll be furious. Mira squeezed her fingers once and stood. The walk through the palace felt longer under escort. Servants flattened themselves against walls. Nobles stared openly from alcoves. Rumor moved faster than footsteps here. And by now, every soul within these walls knew the nameless servant girl had somehow caught the Alpha King's attention. No one looked pleased by it. Torin led her not to a dungeon, nor the throne room, but the royal library. Tall windows spilled pale morning across endless shelves. Fires burned low in twin hearths. Ink and cedar scented the air. And beside the central table, sleeves rolled to his forearms, stood Raylan. Without the throne beneath him, he looked more dangerous, more real. White shirt open at the throat, dark hair unbound. A bruise shadowed one knuckle as though something hard had recently met his fist. He dismissed the guards with a glance. Torin remained. Mira stopped 3 paces away. No one spoke. The thread between them surged so sharply she nearly swayed. Raylan noticed. His jaw tightened. You did not sleep. Neither had she meant to answer, nor had she decided to. Yet the truth left her anyway. Neither did you. Something flickered in Torin's face. Interest, quickly hidden. Raylan gestured to the laden table between them. Bread, fruit, eggs, honey, enough food for 6 people? I'm not hungry, Mira said instantly. Her stomach betrayed her with a growl loud enough to echo off shelves. Torin coughed into his fist. Raylan's mouth almost moved. Not a smile. Something rarer. The memory of one. Eat. I know that tone is effective on soldiers. It does less for me. His eyes sharpened. Good. Let them. She was tired of trembling for everyone else. He stepped closer. Not enough to touch. Enough to change the air. You are shaking. Because your entire kingdom has decided I'm prey. My kingdom follows my lead. Then lead better. Torin made a sound that might have been strangled laughter. Raylan did not look away from her. And for the first time since the ballroom, Mira saw strain beneath the steel. The visible effort of restraint, hands flexing once at his sides, breath measured too carefully. His wolf was close. So was hers. No. That was impossible. She had never shifted. Not once in 23 years. Children in village yards had done it before losing their milk teeth. Even low-born wolves found their other form by adolescence. Mira never had. Lady Varel called her defective, worthless. Proof bad blood rotted everything it touched. Raylan's voice lowered. What did she do to you? The question struck too near the bone. She fed me, housed me, clothed me. Lies smelled different than truth. Mira stilled. He could scent it. Of course an Alpha King could. She taught me silence, Mira said at last. The room changed. Not loudly, not visibly, but Torin's shoulders went rigid. Raylan's gaze became lethal. How long? Long enough. He turned to Torin. Bring me every ledger tied to Lady Varel's estates, every servant roster, every debt transfer, quietly. Torin bowed once and left without a word. Mira's pulse kicked. You cannot wage war because I missed a few meals. His head angled. Few? She looked away. He moved then, circling the table rather than forcing through it, stopping beside a plate instead of beside her. Again, choice. Again, space. He picked up a knife, sliced a pear, and set the plate within reach. No command this time, just an offering. The thread between them warmed unexpectedly. I don't understand what this is, she said. Neither do I fully. That surprised her more than anything. You don't know? I know you are mine. The words hit like flame. Her chin lifted. I belong to no one. His gaze burned brighter. A dangerous answer. The right one. After a long moment, he nodded once. Then let me speak precisely. His voice dropped to something felt more than heard. You are the one the moon made for me. Silence rang through the library. Mira laughed once, sharp and unbelieving. Convenient. For a king who has never been denied, he accepted the blow. I have been denied by you repeatedly. Get used to it. This time the smile almost happened again. Then pain lanced across the back of her shoulder so suddenly she gasped. Her hand flew to the spot. Heat burned beneath the skin. Raylan crossed the distance in one step before stopping himself inches away. What is it? It burns. His nostrils flared. The mark is forming. I have no mark. You will. Terror and fury collided inside her. No, the room spun. The thread yanked hard enough to steal breath. Images flashed behind her eyes that were not hers. Stone walls, shattered goblets, a balcony in winter light, the savage need to tear the kingdom apart until she was found. She stumbled. Strong hands caught her before she hit the floor. The same fire as the ballroom roared through her veins. His voice came rough beside her ear. Mira. Her name in his mouth sounded like a vow. She should have pushed away. Instead, she gripped his shirt with bloodless fingers. For one heartbeat, two, she felt it. Not hunger, not command. Loneliness so vast it hollowed the center of a king. Then she tore free as if burned. Whatever this bond was, it could make a fool of her. I need air. He stepped aside instantly. She reached the door, then stopped. Without turning, she said, If I am free to leave, prove it. How? Call off the guards. His answer came without hesitation. Done. She looked back then, truly looked. No mockery, no trap, no visible lie. Only a man born to absolute power offering it up piece by piece because she asked. That was far more dangerous than chains. Mira walked out of the library with her pulse racing, food untouched, and the king's attention following her like heat. By noon, the guards were withdrawn. By evening, the palace learned a second impossible thing. The Alpha King had bent for no counsel, no enemy, no warlord, but he had bent for her. By evening, every corridor in the palace carried her story. Some said she was a hidden princess. Some said a witch. Some said the king had gone mad beneath the winter moon. The servants were more practical. They said he had sent back an untouched council summons because he was standing in the library staring at the chair where she had sat. Mira did not know if that part was true. She knew only that freedom felt stranger than captivity. No guards followed her now. No steward barked orders. No one stopped her when she crossed from servant passages into halls lined with silver-veined marble and portraits older than memory. Yet with every step, the thread inside her chest hummed. He was in the western wing, then the northern tower, then suddenly still, waiting. She changed direction at once. She would not be summoned by a feeling. The kitchens were safer ground. Heat, noise, knives, ordinary problems. Pella was elbow-deep in pastry dough when Mira slipped inside. You're alive, Pella said. Disappointing to several people. Mira took a towel and began drying bowls. They withdrew the guards. I heard. I also heard Lord Harrow choked on his own rage at luncheon. That almost makes this worthwhile. Pella lowered her voice. What happened in the library? Breakfast. Arrogance. Prophecy nonsense. Did he look devastating? Mira shot her a glare. Pella grinned. That means yes. Before Mira could answer, the kitchen doors burst open. A liveried page boy, cheeks flushed from running, bowed so quickly he nearly tipped forward. Lady Varel requests the girl's immediate return to her household. Every cook in the room went still. Mira set down the bowl carefully. I decline. The boy blinked. I was told to bring you. Then you have failed admirably. He swallowed. She said the king's fascination will pass. The thread in Mira's chest went molten, not from him, from herself. All the years she had bent to survive rose like floodwater. She stepped toward the boy, not unkindly. Tell Lady Varel this. If she wishes to speak to me, she may learn to ask. The page fled. Pella stared. You're terrifying. I'm hungry. It creates an atmosphere. She had just stolen a heel of bread when the room temperature changed. No one announced him. No trumpets. No guards. Yet every spine in the kitchen straightened as Raylan entered through the service arch in plain black clothes and a face carved from a storm. Kings did not come to kitchens. This one did. His gaze found the bread in her hand first, then the smudge of flour on her wrist, then her face. She sent for you. Not a question. Mira bit into the bread, slowly. She requested. Poorly. Several cooks pretended sudden fascination with turnips. Raylan came closer. The thread tightened until breathing became work. You should have told me. That my abuser was annoyed? A flash of raw violence crossed his eyes. Not at her. Never at her. At himself, perhaps, for not knowing sooner. The room listened, without appearing to. She is under investigation, he said. She has survived worse than investigation. She will not survive harming you again. The certainty in his voice should have comforted her. Instead, it terrified, because part of her believed him. And believing powerful men had always been dangerous. She lifted her chin. Do not mistake this for permission to fight my battles. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. As you wish. He reached past her. Every cook froze. Mira did too, but he only took another loaf from the cooling rack, tore it in half, and handed one piece to her. An absurd gesture. Domestic, human, more intimate than touching. She accepted before thinking. The kitchen collectively forgot how to breathe. Raylan broke his own bread and said to no one in particular, Continue. Work resumed in frantic chaos. He stood beside her in companionable silence while kneading bowls clattered and ovens roared. It should have felt ridiculous. Instead, it felt like standing in the eye of a storm. At last he said, What was your family name? The question hit deeper than any threat. She stared at the flour-dusted table. I don't have one. You did. Children in servant cells are not issued lineages. His voice lowered. Mira. The way he said her name made evasion feel impossible. She hated that. And yet Voss? She said quietly. I think. The kitchen noise faded behind the blood rushing in her ears. My mother whispered it when I was small. Once, then never again. Raylan went very still, too still. What? He set down the bread. House Voss was stripped from the royal records 20 years ago? I know nothing about houses. You should. His eyes locked on hers. They guarded the eastern passes for 3 centuries. They died in one night. The cold moved through her limbs. Then my mother lied, or someone buried the truth. Before she could answer, Commander Torin entered at speed. My king. Something in his tone made the room clear instantly. Cooks vanished, doors closed. Pella dragged the page boys out by their collars. Torin handed Raylan a sealed parchment. He read it once. The air changed again. Speak, Raylan said. Torrin's eyes flicked to Mira, then back. Lady Varel's estate is empty. Ledgers burned, servants gone. She fled before dawn. Mira's fingers loosened around the bread. Of course she had. Varel never waited for consequences. She left this, Torrin added, producing a second folded scrap. Raylan opened it. His jaw hardened enough to cut stone. What does it say? He passed it to her. The handwriting was elegant, precise. Names can be stolen twice, little girl. Once by force, once by truth. No signature, none needed. The kitchen walls seemed suddenly too close. Raylan took the note back and fed it directly into the hearth flames. She will be found. Mira laughed without humor. You say that as if the world obeys you. It usually does. That confidence must be restful. Torrin's mouth twitched. Raylan ignored it. Come with me. No. His brows lifted. I have declined you in ballrooms, libraries, and now kitchens. Keep pace. Why? Because there is something you need to see. She should have refused again. Instead, curiosity betrayed her. Minutes later, they stood in the Hall of Lineage, where banners of dead and living houses hung beneath vaulted ceilings. Raylan walked her past wolves crowned in gold, queens draped in silver, bloodlines painted in triumph and war. Then he stopped before an empty iron hook on the stone wall. Only a pale rectangle remained where fabric had once been protected from dust and sun. No banner, Mira said. Removed 20 years ago? Raylan replied. House Voss. The thread between them pulsed hard. He looked not at the wall, but at her. Someone erased your name before you were old enough to defend it. She swallowed against the sudden burn in her throat. Then let it stay buried. No, one word. Absolute. You may reject me. Fight me. Leave this palace tomorrow if you choose. His voice deepened into an oath. But no one steals what is yours while I breathe. For the first time in years, hope stirred, small, treacherous, more dangerous than fear. Because if he failed, it would kill something in her that had only just begun to wake. Hope was poison. Mira knew that better than hunger, better than bruises, better than winter. Hope made people wait for kindness that never came. It made them mistake scraps for feasts and promises for rescue. It built soft places inside the ribs where disappointment could sink its teeth deepest. So when Raylan swore no one would steal what was hers while he lived, she did what survival had taught her. She doubted him. That night, she locked her chamber door twice. The room he had given her sat high in the eastern tower, warm with banked fires and absurdly soft blankets that felt too rich against skin, long used to coarse linen. Moonlight silvered the windows. Beyond them, the kingdom spread in dark forests and scattered watchfires. A beautiful cage was still a cage. She paced until the thread inside her chest began to ache. He was below, council chamber, anger rolling off him in hard waves sharp enough to taste. Then voices rose through the bond in fragments not of sound, but feeling. Resistance, contempt, challenge. She crossed to the window and gripped the stone sill. Good, she thought. Let them trouble him. The satisfaction lasted 3 heartbeats. Then something colder slid through the thread. Not rage, danger. Mira spun toward the door just as someone pounded against it. Open! Torrin! She unbarred it. He entered with 2 guards at his back, sword already drawn. My king ordered you to move. What happened? Council voted to delay Lady Varel's arrest. Of course they had. Why move me for politics? His expression darkened. Because while they argued, the outer sentries were slaughtered. The room seemed to tilt. By whom? Torrin's jaw set. Nothing living. They ran. No ceremony now. No careful distance. Torin dragged her through torchlit corridors while bells began to hammer across the palace. War bells. Doors slammed open. Guards poured from barracks. Servants cried out and vanished into side passages. By the time they reached the inner courtyard, snow had begun to fall in hard white needles, and beyond the gates something screamed. Not wolf, not human. The sound scraped straight down the spine. The outer doors crashed inward. Shapes flooded through the breach, large as wolves, wrong as nightmares. Their bodies flickered between flesh and shadow. Eyes were empty sockets of black hunger. Snow hissed where they stepped, as if winter itself recoiled. The guards charged. Steel met claws. Men died. Mira had seen beatings, starvation, quiet cruelty done in private rooms. She had never seen slaughter. One creature tore through a shield line as though it were paper. Another bit a warrior's throat and kept moving before the body hit the stone. Torin shoved her behind a pillar. "Do not move!" He leapt into the melee with a roar. The thread between her and Raylan became a live wire. He was coming, fast. The courtyard gates to the throne wing burst open. Raylan hit the battle like a thrown blade. Black wolf first, then man, then half-shifted monster of claws and gold eyes and command so violent the very air shook. Down! Every palace wolf dropped instinctively. Even the creatures faltered. He tore one apart with his bare hands. Another he flung clear across the yard. A third lunged for Mira. She did move then, backward, too slow. The thing's jaws opened, gold and black slammed into it from the side. Raylan's shoulder struck stone as he drove the creature away from her. Claws raked across his ribs deep enough to expose blood through torn cloth. Something inside Mira snapped. Not thought, not courage, something older. Light exploded from her palms. Silver white, blinding, pure. It struck the creature full in the chest. The shadow body convulsed, then dissolved into drifting sparks that rose like freed stars into the snow. The courtyard froze. Guards, monsters, Torin, Raylan, all staring. Mira stared too. Light still streamed beneath her skin, racing up her arms in veins of moonfire. Another creature shrieked and charged. She turned instinctively. The second blast hit harder. 3 more shadows unraveled at once. Relief echoed from them as they vanished. Relief, not rage, not hunger. As if something trapped had finally been released. "Mira!" Raylan's voice cut through the roar. She looked at him. Blood soaked his side. The world narrowed to that wound. A creature rose behind him. She ran. No training, no plan. Just movement. She reached him as the beast struck. Its claws plunged into her shoulder. Pain flashed white. Her hand hit its throat. Light detonated. The creature disintegrated around them. Then darkness rushed in from the edges of her vision. Strong arms caught her before she fell. Again. Always him. His face swam above hers, streaked with blood and snow. "Stay with me." The thread between them flooded open. His fear hit first, then fury, then something so vast and raw it stole breath. Need. Not the possessive hunger she expected. The desperate terror of almost losing something he had only just found. She touched his jaw with trembling fingers. "You're bleeding. So are you." That seems unfair. For one impossible second, in the middle of carnage, his mouth almost curved. Then the surviving creatures fled into the storm, melting over the walls like smoke. Silence fell hard. Torin barked orders. Healers ran. Bodies were turned gently onto cloaks. Snow covered blood with indifferent grace. Raylan carried her inside. Not allowed, not asked, carried. She should have protested. Instead, she let her head rest against his shoulder and listened to the savage rhythm of his heart. The healer's chamber blazed with lamplight. Thessaly, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, met them at the door. "Put her here." He did not move. "Now, Your Majesty." Reluctantly, he laid Mira on the bed. Thessaly cut the torn sleeve from her dress and examined the wound. Her hands glowed gold as common healing magic poured into shredded flesh. But her eyes stayed on the silver still pulsing beneath Mira's skin. "Well," the healer murmured. "That answers several old questions." Mira clenched her teeth. "Try fewer riddles." Thessaly's smile was brief. "You are not what they told you." Raylan stood at the bedside, blood still dripping from his own side unnoticed. "What is she?" The older woman looked between them, then bowed her head slightly to Mira, someone hidden for a very long time. She turned to the king. "And someone your enemies feared enough to erase." The room chilled despite the fire. Raylan's gaze darkened. "Varel did this." "No," Thessaly said quietly. "Varel served someone." Mira pushed upright despite the pain. "Who?" The healer's face hardened. "I do not know yet. A lie. Small, protective, meant kindly." Raylan scented it too. She saw it in the flare of his nostrils. He let it pass. "For now." Thessaly finished the healing and stepped back. "She needs rest. I'm not tired." Mira swayed instantly. Raylan caught her elbow. The contact sent warmth racing through the thread. Infuriating. Comforting. Both. When the healer finally forced him out to have his own wounds treated, he paused at the door and looked back at her. The king, who had torn monsters apart in the snow, looked strangely human then, almost uncertain. "They came for you," he said. Mira held his gaze. "No." She touched the fading silver at her palms. "They came for what I am." His answer came like a vow, spoken to the dark. Then let them come. By morning, the kingdom had already changed. No proclamation was needed. Fear moved faster than messengers. By sunrise, every market, barracks yard, and noble hall carried the same story. Shadow creatures had breached the palace. A servant girl had destroyed them with light, and the Alpha King had carried her through blood and snow like something irreplaceable. Mira woke to silence outside her chamber. Whispers retreated before she even opened the door. Even fear had learned caution. She stood before the mirror, the same face, yet not the same woman. Her eyes held something new, brown circled by a thin ring of silver, like moonlight trapped beneath glass. A knock came. Pella entered without waiting, arms full of food. "I bullied 3 footmen for this." Mira stared. "That is enough for a court feast. Then we'll call it practice." Before Mira could respond, another knock came, measured, controlled. Raylan entered. The room tightened around him. Black leathers, fresh bandages across his throat. A wound hidden beneath armor, but not beneath the bond. Pain restrained. Torin followed silently. Pella vanished. Raylan's gaze checked Mira in one sweep. "You're standing. So are you." A flicker of something almost like relief passed through him. He held out a cloak, dark green, lined with fur. "For the council chamber." "I did not accept an invitation. You didn't have a choice. That sounds familiar." His voice lowered. "They will question you. Let them try." Torin exhaled like a man watching a storm form indoors. Raylan stepped closer. "You should hear what they fear." "I already know." "Me?" "No," he said quietly. "What you are becoming." The thread between them warmed. Mira took the cloak only to end the proximity. "Fine. But if anyone calls me girl, I will correct them. You already do." Torin coughed once into his fist. The council chamber was built for control. 7 seats, black stone. High gallery packed with watching nobles. Conversation died when Mira entered beside the king. Lord Karthus rose first. "With respect, bringing an unknown, sit," Raylan said. He sat. High Elder Marrow spoke next, calmer. What happened last night? Mira didn't sit. I don't know. That answer unsettled the room more than any declaration. Karthus scoffed. Convenient ignorance. Raylan's hand cracked the armrest. Then Thessaly entered and placed an old ledger on the table. 23 years ago, I attended a birth in secrecy beyond the eastern passes. The mother named herself Lady Alara Voss. The room shifted. House Voss. Erased history. Thessaly continued, voice steady. She was hunted, and not alone. Her eyes lifted to Mira. With her stood a man made of light. Chaos broke instantly. Karthus shouted. Others followed. Raylan's voice cut through it. Enough! Silence returned by force. Mira barely breathed. A man? Thessaly nodded. Not wolf, not human, something ancient. She turned a page. At dawn, the cottage burned. Cold spread through Mira's chest. Raylan moved instantly beside her, hand hovering but not touching. Karthus seized the moment. Then she is unstable. She should be contained. Raylan turned slowly. No. You risk the realm, I risk nothing. I decide. The simplicity of it ended the argument. Mira's voice sharpened. I will not be confined. Not again. No one spoke. Raylan faced the chamber. You heard her. And for the first time, the room understood. She was not being protected as property. She was being backed as a choice. Outside the palace, somewhere beyond winter walls, whatever had survived the fire in her past, finally understood it would have to face both her power and the king who refused to let her stand alone. Snow fell for 3 straight days. It buried the blood in the courtyard. It softened the broken stones where the gates had shattered. It turned the palace towers into pale ghosts rising from white silence. But inside the walls, nothing softened at all. Guards doubled on every entrance. Messengers rode at dawn and returned after dark. The council argued in circles sharp enough to draw blood. And everywhere Mira went, people stared as if they expected light to burst from her skin at any moment. Sometimes she wanted it to. Sometimes she wanted to disappear again. The worst part was the waiting. No fresh attack came. No letter. No demand. Only the certainty that something had reached for her once and would reach again. She hated uncertainty. She hated that part of her now measured each room by how quickly Raylan could enter it. She hated even more that the answer comforted her. On the 4th night, sleep finally took her and delivered her somewhere else. She stood in a forest of silver trees. Moonlight poured through branches that had no leaves, only light. Snow drifted upward instead of down. The air hummed with distant music she felt in her bones more than heard. She was not alone. A figure waited beside a frozen stream. Tall, female, wrapped in darkness that moved like smoke around bare hands. Lady Varel. Yet not the powdered noblewoman from court. This version wore no jewels. Her face was younger, sharper, stripped of every polite mask. You found the path at last, Varel said. Mira's heart hammered. If this is a dream, I choose better company. A faint smile. You always had your mother's tongue. The words struck harder than threat. Do not speak of her. Why not? I killed her. The forest shook. Light flared instinctively in Mira's palms, but the silver trees dimmed around Varel, as if feeding her shadow. You lie. I wish I did. Varel stepped closer. She begged beautifully. Rage became something physical. Mira lunged. Her hands passed through smoke. The woman only laughed. This place belongs to the bond, little girl, not to flesh. The thread inside Mira's chest blazed hot. Another presence tore through the dream like thunder. Raylan. He emerged from the trees in black and gold, not surprised to be there, eyes fixed wholly on Varel. Step away from her. Varel's smile widened. How touching. He found the dream road faster than your father did. Mira turned sharply. My father was here? For a time. Varel's eyes gleamed. He screamed louder when I took his light. Raylan moved with lethal speed. His hand closed on Varel's throat, smoke scattered. She reformed 10 paces away. You cannot kill what you do not understand, she said. But come find me if you like. Follow the ashes of House Voss. I'll be waiting. The dream shattered. Mira woke upright with a cry. Her chamber doors slammed open. Raylan crossed the room barefoot, sword in hand, hair loose, chest bare beneath an unlaced shirt as if he had come directly from sleep. He stopped at the bedside the instant he saw no attacker. The sword lowered. What happened? She was breathing too fast to lie. She was here. His face changed. Not disbelief. Murder. He set the sword aside and knelt before the bed so their eyes were level. Tell me. So she did. Every word. The silver forest. The taunts. Her mother. Her father. Ashes of House Voss. When she finished, silence stretched between them, warm and charged and intimate in the dark. He spoke first. The bond carried me to you, I noticed. His gaze dropped briefly to her shaking hands. Then he did something more dangerous than touching. He asked, May I? She swallowed. Yes. He took her hands in his. Heat spread instantly through frozen fingers. The thread quieted, soothed by contact. No demand, no possession, just presence. You are safe, he said. I know. The admission came too easily. They both heard it. His thumbs brushed once over her knuckles. What did she mean by ashes? Mira closed her eyes. I think we're meant to find where my house died. Then we leave at dawn. You have a kingdom. I have priorities. She almost smiled. By sunrise, they rode east with a small company. Raylan, Torin, 6 guards, and Mira, wrapped in fur atop a black mare, who disliked everyone equally. Snowfields gave way to pine forest, then broken hills where old watchtowers rotted into stone ribs. The farther east they traveled, the louder the thread hummed. Not from him, from the land itself. By dusk, they reached it, or what remained. A valley ringed by scorched trees, half-buried walls blackened by ancient fire. Iron gates melted into twisted shapes no ordinary blaze could make. House Voss, or its grave. The guards spread out. Torin examined tracks. Raylan dismounted and offered Mira his hand. She ignored it and slid down alone. The moment her boots touched the ash-dark ground, silver light pulsed beneath the snow. Everyone froze. Lines appeared in widening circles under the drifts, as if old carvings were waking. Symbols, runes, a path. It knows you, Thessaly would have said. But Thessaly was not here, only the wind and the dead. Mira followed the glowing trail through ruined arches into the heart of the estate. There, beneath collapsed beams, stood a single stone door untouched by time. No handle, no lock, only the crest of House Voss carved into its face. A crescent moon crossed by flame. Raylan came to stand beside her. Can you open it? I don't know. Then try. She placed her palm against the crest. Pain flashed through her shoulder mark. Light poured from her skin into the stone. The door groaned, then slowly opened inward. Cold air rushed out carrying the scent of cedar and something impossibly familiar she had never known. Home. They descended by torchlight into a hidden chamber lined with shelves, weapons, and sealed chests untouched for 20 years. At the center stood a cradle of silver wood, empty. Beside it lay 2 skeletons, hand in hand, one small and fine-boned, One larger, ribs shattered outward as if light had burst from within. Mira could not breathe. No tears came at first, only absence. Raylan stood a respectful distance away, every instinct in him visibly straining toward her while he honored the space she had not asked him to cross. She knelt beside the bones. Around the smaller skeleton's wrist remained a bracelet of woven silver thread. Without knowing why, Mira touched it. The chamber ignited. Memory flooded the walls. A woman laughing, a man bright as dawn lifting an infant high. Riders at the gate. Fire. Varel's younger face streaked with soot. And a voice, female, desperate, speaking directly into the dark. Hide her name. Hide her light. Let her live long enough to choose her own life. The vision vanished. Mira swayed. Strong arms caught her from behind. This time, she did not pull away. She saved me, Mira whispered. Raylan's voice roughened near her hair. She did. I never knew them. You know enough. At the far end of the chamber, Torin cursed sharply. He held up a fresh torch, its flame illuminated bootprints in the dust. Recent, not theirs. Varel had been here, and she had wanted Mira to follow. The chamber changed the instant Torin found the tracks. Grief vanished beneath instinct. Guards drew steel. Raylan released Mira only long enough to place himself between her and the dark corridor beyond the hidden room. Fresh prints led deeper into the ruin. Not one set, 3. Human, unhurried. They wanted to be seen, Torin said. Yes, Raylan replied, which means they want us moving. Mira rose slowly. They wanted me moving. The truth of it settled like ice. Varel had not hidden the tracks. She had placed them. Every revelation, every cruelty, every breadcrumb through the ashes of House Voss had led to one place. Here, now. Raylan turned to her. You stay with the rear guard. No. Mira? No. The single word surprised even her in its force. This is my family buried at our feet, my blood in these walls, my hunter in these tunnels. She lifted her chin. You do not get to place me behind men and call it protection. The thread between them sparked hot. Fury, respect, fear, all tangled together. At last he said, Then you stay beside me. It was not victory. It felt dangerously close. They moved through the mountain passage in tight formation. Torchlight crawled over carved stone older than the kingdom itself. The walls were etched with crescent moons, wolves, and figures made of flame kneeling beneath stars. The air grew warmer the deeper they went. Then wrong. Too still. No drip of water, no scrape of boots. Even breath seemed muffled. Mira felt it first through the thread. Not Raylan. Something else. A hunger pressing against the edges of the world. Stop, she whispered. Too late. The floor gave way beneath the front rank. Stone shattered. 2 guards dropped with shouts into darkness below. A roar answered from the pit. Creatures surged upward, not the half-formed shadows from the palace. These were larger, denser. Bodies armored in blackened bone, eyes like hollow furnaces. The tunnel exploded into violence. Torin dragged one guard clear, while another beast tore through a shield. Raylan shifted mid-stride. Bones cracked. Cloth dissolved. Black Wolf, the size of a warhorse, slammed into the nearest creature hard enough to crater stone. Mira hit the wall as claws raked where her throat had been. Light burst from her palm and sheared through shadow flesh. It dissolved, screaming. Another replaced it instantly. Too many, too narrow a space. Fall back, Torin shouted. No, came Varel's voice from somewhere ahead. Come forward. The tunnel walls split. Iron gates crashed down behind them. Then, before them. They were trapped inside a killing box. From hidden slits above, black arrows rained. One guard fell without a sound. Another dropped, clutching his neck. Poison. Raylan's roar shook dust from the ceiling. He tore through two creatures and hurled himself at the rear gate, claws gouging iron but not breaking it. Mira turned in a circle of chaos. There, a raised ledge above the battle. Lady Varel stood in dark riding leathers, no jewels, no mask, smiling down like a priestess at sacrifice. Beside her waited a hooded man holding a chain of black metal. At the end of the chain, a wolf knelt, silver-gray fur matted with blood. Eyes empty. Torin saw him and went white. Joran, his brother, missing 6 years, alive, or what remained. Varel's voice carried sweetly through screams. You see, souls can be hollowed and taught obedience. The hooded man yanked the chain. The wolf lunged at Torin. He could not strike, could not move. The hesitation nearly killed him. Mira sent light upward. Varel stepped aside. The blast shattered stone but touched no flesh. Still impulsive, Varel called, You get that from your mother. Raylan reached Mira in one savage bound, half-shifted and bleeding. Stay behind me. I'm ending this. You're not dying for revenge. The words struck deep because they were true. Another poisoned arrow flew. Raylan twisted, taking it high in the shoulder before it could hit her. He staggered. Something primal tore through Mira. The thread flooded with his pain. Then with a command so raw it was almost sound. Run. She did the opposite. Silver fire erupted from her in a widening ring. Creatures disintegrated. Arrows melted midair. The nearest gate glowed red. Varel's smile finally faltered. Interesting, she murmured. The hooded man moved then, faster than sight. He dropped from the ledge in a spill of living shadow and landed between them. Tall, broad, face hidden, hands blackened with stolen power. He raised one palm. Darkness struck Mira like a hammer. She flew backward into stone, breath gone. Raylan hit him an instant later. Wolf and Shadow crashed through the tunnel wall into a side chamber. The mountain shook. Torin fought through 2 beasts to reach his chained brother. Tears and blood ran together down his face as he tried to hold without killing. Mira pushed upright. Every rib screamed. The hooded man emerged from the broken wall, dragging Raylan by the throat in one hand. The king's body was human again, blood pouring from his mouth. No one had ever touched him like that. The stranger's hood fell back. The chamber froze. His face was beautiful in the way ruins were beautiful. Sharp-boned, golden-eyed, and lit from within by corrupted light. Mira knew him instantly, though they had never met, because some part of her blood recognized its own shape. He smiled. Hello, daughter? The world stopped. No. Varel descended lightly to stand beside him. I did tell you your father screamed. Raylan tried to rise. The man tightened his grip until stone cracked beneath his boots. I was king once, he said conversationally, before wolves multiplied and crawled over lands built by brighter things. You're dead, Mira whispered. Nearly. He touched the blackness moving beneath his skin. Your mother lacked vision. She would rather die pure than rule eternal. Mira's stomach turned. He was the larger skeleton. No, a body left behind. A shell. What are you? She said. His smile widened. Your inheritance. He flung Raylan aside like broken armor. The king struck the wall and did not move. Something inside Mira went cold enough to burn. The man stepped toward her with open arms. Come willingly, and I spare the wolves. Varel laughed softly. You always did love theatrics. Mira looked at Raylan motionless in blood, at Torin screaming his brother's name, at guards dying in the dark, at the father who had become hunger-wearing memory. Then she stood. Light trembled beneath her skin. "I am nothing like you," he answered with certainty. "You are exactly like me," and lunged. He moved like falling night. No hesitation, no warning, no trace of the man from the memory in the hidden chamber. Only hunger wearing her father's face. Mira met him with light. Silver fire collided with black shadow, and the mountain screamed. Stone split overhead. Dust rained down in blinding sheets. The force of impact threw guards from their feet and sent creatures shrieking into cracks in the wall. He smiled through it, not pained, fed. Every strike she gave him, he consumed. The silver at her palms dimmed. Understanding hit like ice. He can eat the light. Varel's delighted laugh rang through the chamber. At last. Her father backhanded Mira across the stone. She hit the ground hard enough to taste blood. "Too much of your mother in you," he said. "She wasted power on mercy." He reached for her throat. Gold and black slammed into him from the side. Raylan, bleeding, half-shifted, eyes blazing with murder. They crashed through a pillar in a storm of claws and shadow. Mira rolled clear as rubble thundered down where she had lain. Torrens' roar echoed behind her. He had broken the black chain. The silver-gray wolf that had been his brother convulsed, empty eyes flickering as if something trapped inside fought to rise. Another creature leapt for Torren. Mira threw light on instinct. It dissolved, but weaker now. Much weaker. Raylan drove her father into the wall with enough force to crack stone. For one savage heartbeat, the king had the advantage. Then blackness poured from her father's skin like living tar. It wrapped Raylan's arms, legs, throat, pinned him. The king strained against it, muscles shaking, teeth bared, every inch of him fighting toward her, always toward her. "Mira," his voice tore through the chamber. "Do not let him touch you." Her father laughed. "You think this beast loves you more than I might?" Raylan answered first. "I would die before I used her." The words landed deeper than any blow. Her father's smile vanished. He turned with sudden fury and drove a spear of shadow straight through Raylan's side. The sound Mira made did not feel human. The thread between them ripped open. Pain. His pain. Then fear, not for himself. For her. He dropped to one knee, blood spreading black-red across stone. Something inside Mira reached breaking point. Not rage. Choice. She saw it suddenly with impossible clarity. Her father consumed silver moonlight. But Thessaly had once spoken of another light in frightened half-phrases. A brighter source. Older. Harder to wield. Not the moon. The sun. Warmth surged beneath her ribs where the bond lived, where Raylan's presence had become anchor, thread, home. He had never tried to own that place. He had earned it. Mira rose. Silver fire vanished from her skin. The chamber stilled. Even her father frowned. Then gold erupted. Not pale gold, not wolf gold. Dawn. Blazing, fierce, unbearable dawn poured from every line of her body. The tunnel flooded with day. Shadows shrieked and recoiled. Creatures burst apart where they stood. Varel screamed and covered her face. Her father staggered back at last. "What have you done?" Mira's voice carried with strange calm through the storm of light. "I chose." She lifted one hand. Gold struck him full in the chest. For the first time, he truly cried out. The blackness peeled from his body in burning ribbons. Beneath it flashed the man from the memory, beautiful, grieving, ruined, before corruption swallowed him again. He dropped to his knees. "Mira, daughter, a plea now, a father's face, the cruelest weapon yet." Her hand trembled. Raylan's voice came rough through blood behind her. "Look at me." She turned. He was on one knee, pale with pain, one hand pressed to the wound in his side, gold eyes locked wholly on hers. Not asking for vengeance, not asking for death, only trust. You are not him, he said. Choose what lets you live with yourself. The mountain seemed to hold its breath. Mercy, then, not surrender, not weakness. Choice. Mira stepped to her father. The gold in her palm softened. She touched his brow. Light moved inward instead of out. The corruption screamed as it was dragged free. Shadows tore from his mouth, eyes, wounds, unraveling into ash that the air itself rejected. When it ended, a dying man knelt before her. No stolen power, no glamour, only age and regret. He looked up through tears. She loved you more than me. Yes, Mira said. He smiled once, brokenly. Good. Then he fell still. Silence crashed down. Varel tried to flee. Torin intercepted her with sword drawn and grief carved into every line of his face. For Joran. She lifted her chin. Do it then. Become what you hate. He hesitated. Mira crossed the chamber. Varel's eyes found her and sharpened. You owe me fear? No, Mira said softly. I outgrew it. She placed 2 fingers against the woman's forehead. Silver, not gold this time, flowed gently. Varel gasped as shadows hidden in her bones were drawn out thread by thread. When the darkness left, the elegance went with it. She became only an aging woman trembling in the ruins she had built. What are you doing? Varel whispered. Returning what you chose to lose. Mira stepped back. Torin lowered his blade, a punishment harsher than execution. To live ordinary after worshipping power. Then Mira turned, because the thread was fading. Raylan swayed where he knelt, blood pooling beneath him. Fear hit colder than any winter. She ran, dropped beside him. Hands to the wound. Gold light poured instinctively, desperate and wild. It's not closing. His fingers caught her wrist. Enough. No, you'll burn yourself empty. I don't care. His blood-wet hand rose to her cheek. I do. The bond shook with the force of what moved between them. No room left for denial. No shelter left in anger. She bent and pressed her forehead to his. Then don't leave me. His breath caught. Never in all his power had she heard him sound so undone. Again, he whispered. She understood. The words. The truth. This time chosen freely. I love you. The wound closed under her hands in a burst of gold. The thread between them became something vast and whole, no longer stretched between 2 people, but rooted through both. Raylan exhaled like a man returned from the edge of death. Then, despite blood, ruin, corpses, and a mountain half collapsed around them, he gave her that rarest thing, a real smile. Above them, dawn broke through the shattered ceiling. They returned to the capital at sunrise 3 days later. Word outran them. It always did. By the time the palace towers rose from the winter plain, roads were lined with villagers, traders, soldiers, widows, children on shoulders, and nobles pretending they had come only to observe. No one believed that lie. They had come to see what survived the mountain. They had come to see if their king still stood. They had come to see the woman who had gone into the dark and come back carrying dawn in her hands. Mira wanted none of it. Crowds had watched her starve and called it order. Crowds had watched her bleed and called it entertainment. Crowds were dangerous because they could love cruelty as easily as justice. She kept her chin high anyway. Raylan rode beside her on a black stallion, one hand easy on the reins despite the healing wound beneath his armor. Torin led the rear guard. Behind them, bound but unharmed, Lady Varel rode in a plain cart under watch. No jewels now, no velvet, no audience left to deceive. The palace gates opened. No fanfare, no musicians, only ranks of guards striking fists to breastplates as their king passed. Then, one by one, servants began to kneel. Kitchen boys, stable hands, maids in gray wool, launderers with reddened hands, people who had once lowered their eyes because survival demanded it. Now they looked straight at her. Not worship, recognition. Mira's throat tightened unexpectedly. Pella broke formation entirely, sprinted down the steps, and threw herself at Mira the moment she dismounted. "You vanished into a mountain. I noticed. You could have sent a note. I was busy avoiding death." Pella burst into tears and fury at once. "I hate when you're reasonable." Raylan watched the exchange with that unreadable stillness that now hid amusement more often than menace. Progress, she supposed. The throne room filled before noon. Council members in ceremonial robes. Generals. Noble houses draped in inherited arrogance. Witnesses packed the gallery 3 rows deep. At the center of the chamber, under chains of silver light, stood Lady Varel. Ordinary. That was the first thing everyone noticed. Without stolen shadow, she seemed smaller, older. A woman who had traded her soul for posture and found posture a poor companion. The second thing they noticed was that Mira stood beside the throne. Not below it, beside it. Murmurs rolled through the hall. Lord Karthus rose immediately, because fools often mistook habit for courage. This spectacle insults the order of the realm. Raylan did not look at him, then be insulted quietly. Laughter broke from the gallery before fear swallowed it. Karthus flushed dark red. He pointed at Varel. "This woman stands accused by rumor and witchlight. Where is lawful proof?" Mira stepped forward before Raylan could answer. "I am." The room stilled. She descended from the dais, one measured step at a time, until she stood face to face with the woman who had stolen her childhood. Varel met her gaze without bowing. "You always did enjoy attention. I learned from the best." A ripple moved through the chamber. Mira turned to the court. She beat servants for breathing too loudly, sold children into debt, starved anyone who might become difficult. She hunted my mother, helped murder my house, led creatures of stolen souls into this palace. Karthus scoffed. "Words. Very well." Mira lifted one hand. Silver light threaded through the air and settled above the chamber floor like mist. Images formed inside it. A burning cottage. Young Varel opening the gate. Riders entering. Her father kneeling beside corruption. The tunnel trap. The chained wolf. Varel guiding shadow creatures through palace snow. Gasps broke across the room. Several nobles recoiled as if struck. The vision faded. Karthus sat without being told. At last. High Elder Marrow rose slowly. "Lady Varel, do you deny what was shown?" Varel's laugh was dry as paper. "Deny? No." Her gaze found Mira. "I would do it all again." A collective shudder passed through the hall. "Why?" Marrow asked. For the first time, something honest entered Varel's face. "Because your kind kneels to blood and beauty and prophecy." Her voice sharpened. "I had none, so I took power where I found it. There it was, not grandeur, envy, the small, ordinary root of monstrous things." Marrow looked to the king. "Sentence lies with the crown." Every eye turned to Raylan. He remained seated only long enough to remind them that he could be. Then he stood. No shout, no ceremony. The room leaned toward him like grass before weather. "Lady Varel of no house," he said, voice cold enough to frost stone. "You are stripped of title, land, and name. Your estates will be broken, and their wealth used to restore every family you ruined. You will live under guard in the Eastern Hospice, where the wounded and poor may decide daily whether to forgive you." Varel blanched. Mercy had always frightened the cruel more than death. "Kill me instead," she snapped. "No!" The word hit harder than any blade. She was dragged away, screaming. Silence followed. Then Karthus made one final mistake. "And what of her?" he demanded, pointing at Mira. "Unknown blood, unchecked power, no proper standing. Will the throne be shared now with every stray servant girl who catches royal favor?" The thread between Mira and Raylan flashed hot with dangerous calm. He could destroy the man with a sentence. Instead, he looked at her. Choice, always. So Mira answered herself. She walked to the center of the chamber and faced the council. "You ask my standing?" She lifted her hand. Silver and gold rose together, circling her like twin suns. The banners overhead snapped in a wind no one else could feel. At the far end of the hall, the empty hook from House Voss, brought that morning by Torin and fixed to the wall as witness, began to glow. A banner no hand touched unfurled from light itself. Deep midnight cloth, a crescent moon crossed by flame. House Voss reborn. Half the chamber dropped to one knee from shock alone. Mira's voice carried clear to the rafters. "My name was buried. I reclaimed it." She turned to Karthus. "As for being a servant, yes." A pause of breath. "I remember exactly how your world treats the powerless. That is why it will change." The gallery erupted, some in outrage, many in cheers. Raylan descended the dais and came to stand at her side. Together, they faced the storm. For the first time, the kingdom saw what power looked like when it did not stand alone. Power changed the room. Love changed the kingdom. In the weeks after the trial, petitions flooded the palace. Nobles demanded privilege, merchants sought advantage. But it was the commoners who brought the truth of the realm: broken contracts, stolen sons, ruined harvests, unpaid debts. Mira insisted on reading every petition herself. At first, the council dismissed it as symbolism. Then they noticed she remembered names, not titles. Names: the laundress with 3 children, the blacksmith whose land was stolen, the baker fined into starvation. People the court had never seen were suddenly impossible to ignore. Within weeks, lords began to fear her more than they disliked her. Raylan watched quietly as the balance of power shifted. He ruled armies. She ruled consequences, and together they could not be easily moved. Lady Varel lived in enforced exile. Families she had destroyed did not come to scream at her, but to recover what she had stolen: names, records, land, and truth. She answered under watch, stripped of all illusion. Mercy became punishment that did not end. Recovered wealth rebuilt villages. Lost names returned to graves. Mira visited once, only once. "I am not victorious," she said. "I ended you." She left without anger, and that silence stayed longer than hatred ever would. Torin became warden of the northern roads, refusing greater titles. He rebuilt the Voss lands stone by stone and placed refugees before nobles in every hall. His brother Joran never fully returned, but he began to recognize light again. That was enough. The palace adapted in quieter ways. Servants noticed the king missing at dawn and returning later from Mira's rooms. Council meetings started late after snowstorms. No one commented. They argued often over war, law, and how to rebuild a broken kingdom. But the arguments no longer ended in dominance. They ended in understanding. Raylan listened more. Mira trusted more. Neither surrendered what mattered. That was why it worked. In spring, the mating laws were rewritten. Bonds could not be forced. Claims required consent. The old houses called it blasphemy. The young called it overdue. The kingdom endured because it had no other choice. Then came the child. Raylan learned in a war briefing. 3 generals later swore they had never seen him go pale. He left so fast a man walked out holding the wrong maps. Mira was in the south garden beneath the ancient oak when he found her. "You look afraid," she said. "I have faced warbands larger than cities, and I understood warbands." She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Nothing could yet be felt. Everything changed anyway. The bond between them flared warm and absolute. He dropped to one knee without thinking, not for power, for reverence. Months later, their daughter was born at dawn, dark-haired and loud with authority. A pulse of gold light shattered glass and healed the midwife's old injury. Raylan cried and denied it afterward. No one believed him. They named her Elira. Years softened the kingdom. Children of servants studied beside nobles. Roads reopened. Taxes became fair. The throne room remained grand, but now it served the living, not the powerful. One evening, Mira stood on the balcony watching the city glow. Raylan held her from behind. Below, Elira chased fireflies while Torin pretended not to lose. The kingdom breathed, alive, unfinished. "Good. You were right," Mira said. "About what? That I was not what made me. And now?" She turned to him. "I became what I chose." His voice was quiet, certain. It was always going to be magnificent. Below them, their daughter howled at the moon. Raylan muttered something unfit for royalty and went to rescue the garden birds. Mira laughed, watching him go. The man who burned every bridge to find her. The man who helped her build better ones. And in a kingdom remade by choice instead of fear, she finally understood that having nothing had been the beginning of having everything.